Okay, we are holding Daf Chav Dalet Be'ezus Hashem, and we are starting from just after the Mishnah by the Gemara. So I'll make it larger. Hi, Lewis. We're just beginning.
Hi.
Okay, we're up to Chav Gimel Amud Beis by the Gemara. So I just want to recap the Mishnah in a very simple. We'll recap it a little bit, and then we'll have the Gemara discuss it. But basically, the Mishnah said you have a guy, Ruvain, right? You'll call him Ruvain. He's going to eventually die. But Ruvain was Mekadesh two sisters, and he doesn't know which one he gave Kedushin to, right? I don't know. He was drunk. Or let's say he said, I'm giving you both a little Kedushin. I'll decide later who I'm going to marry. You can't marry two sisters, so he'll pick one later. So the Mishnah says that if he wants to get separated from them, he has to give two divorces because you don't know which one he was Mekadesh. If he dies, Shimon, his brother, if he has only one brother, he has to do chalitza to both. Why? Because since you don't know who is the real Yavama over here, if he does Yavam to one of them and it turns out he got it wrong, he's marrying Achois Zukukasai, means really he's bonded to another one, to the other sister. So if you're bonded to a sister, you can't marry, you can't marry the other sister. So therefore, Shimon, we require him to give chalitza to both. That's the first case of the Mishnah. But what happens in the second case when Reuven dies? And again, Reuven was Mekadesh two women, and he doesn't know which one he was Mekadesh. So one is his wife, and the sister is not his wife, which we just don't know. So if there are two brothers there, the Mishnah says that when he dies, one will do chalitza, and the second one will do yibam. And think about that, because if one does chalitza, so the second one, if the second one does yibam to the other one, to the remaining one, well, think about that. If it's the real wife of Ruvain, if it's his real wife, then he's doing yibam properly. And if it's not the real wife, and the other one was the real wife, so then the other one got the chalitza, and this one he's marrying a sister of somebody who was formerly bonded to him, but not anymore because his brother did chalitza on the sister. So that's the case of the second case of the Mishnah. Then the Mishnah goes and gives you another case, and this is why Yevamos gets a little bit. You have to draw it out. What happens? You have two men from two different families. Each one was Mekadesh two sisters, but they don't know which one. So if they die, the Mishnah says, then if they only have one brother each, then they go, each one of them should do two chalitzas, because this case is very similar to the first case, where we say if there's only one brother, you do chalitza to both. Says the Mishnah, and this is 2b, if one of the people had one brother and the other had two brothers, well, the one with the one brother should do chalitza on both. The other family with the two brothers, one does chalitza and one does yibam. Okay? And then we're going to go into the final case of the Mishnah in a moment. But let's do the Mishnah.
Bernard, maybe he wasn't drunk, but maybe they were twins, identical twins.
That's what the Gemara is going to say. I mean, basically, okay. I think so. That's the Gemara's first question. How could you have a Kedushin that's platonic? In other words, Shema Mina, from our Mishnah, we can prove that if I give a Kedushin, I say I'm not going to do Biyah. Kedushin she'ein mesurin lebiyah. Kedushin that's not given over to Biyah, that you can't have a intimacy with such a woman. You left it, up in doubt. And I gave an example that you had two sisters, and you flip the coin, and it says if it lands on head, I'm going to be married to the one on the right. If it lands on tails, I'm going to marry the one on the left. And he flips the coin into the ocean. Right? He's on a ship and he flips it into the ocean. So he'll never know. There's no way of you ever knowing who. So is that a good Kedushin? Some say, since from the very beginning it's not given over for intimacy, that's not called a good Kedushin. So for our Mishnah, it's since that's the case, have a Kedushin. So this is what the Gemara says. It seems, no. You got Hachab Amayaskini here. We're talking about Kishhokru, he actually knew in the beginning who he was going to marry. And then it got mixed up, says the guy. Now that's what I think what the Gemara is saying is that it was identical twins. So at one time he knew, and then he took a few drinks and now he mixed it up and he doesn't know which one he said. Dekiname, if you precisely medayek from the Mishnah says he does not know right now. And he doesn't know, and it doesn't say he never knew. It says he doesn't know right now which sister is his wife. Shema Mina, that's a proof that our Mishnah doesn't hold of the concept of kedushin shein mesurin l'biyah. It has to be a kedushin that you can actually consummate with intimacy. So the Gemara says, if so, Mike Mashmalon, what is the point of the Mishnah? Certainly, if you don't know which girl is your wife, then if you want to separate from both of them, you have to give them both a divorce. So what's the chiddush of the Mishnah? So the Gemara says, Seifa itzrich alei. I need it for the end of the Mishnah. Meis v'loy echad. If he has only one brother, choylitz l'shteim, then you do chalitza for both, because he can't do yibam. If he has two brothers, then echad choylitz, one will do chalitza to one sister, and the other brother will do yibam for the second sister. And this is what the point of the Mishnah is. You have to do chalitza first and then do yibam. Aval yibumi bereisha, but if you do yibam first, loy, why? Because then he's marrying his sister that's bounded. You see, in this case over here, when they have two brothers on the sidelines, if you tell this guy to do yibam, maybe he got it wrong. Maybe that wasn't Reuven's wife. And so he's marrying the sister of a woman that's really bonded to him. So the chiddush of the Mishnah is that the only way to make this work is if you do chalitza first, and then and the one brother does chalitza first, and the second brother does yibam. So no matter what, if it's the right girl, then he's doing yibam. If the remainder one was the wrong girl, well, he's not bonded anymore to her sister because his brother did chalitza. So that's what the point of the Mishnah is. Then
you have to neutralize the Zika first.
That's perfect. There's no better way to word it. You have to neutralize the Zika first. Now the Mishnah says, Shnaim shekitzu shtei achoyes. So the Mishnah brings the second case. If two people in two families are Mekadesh, the same two sisters, but they're two different families, right? So you have a case where one family had two brothers, one family had one brother. And then you have a case, the final case in the Mishnah, which I didn't mention before, is one family had two brothers, the other family had two brothers. So the Gemara first says the same proof. Shema mina kedushin she'en mesurin l'biyah have a kedushin. Would you say that this part of the Mishnah, which seems to repeat the same idea, I mean, you could all figure this out from the once you give me the set rules, that when there's one brother, you do two chalitzas. When there's two brothers, one does chalitza, one does yibam. So why do you give me a permutation that there's two families over here? So maybe the chiddush of the Mishnah is to teach you that concept that kedushin that's not given over for intimacy is called a kedushin. So the Gemara says, hachinami, no, the second end of the Mishnah is the same idea. They recognized you actually knew which sister you were marrying, and then they got mixed up. They know now. Like it doesn't say the Mishnah that they never knew. So they never knew. It must be that he knew exactly each person that did the kedushin on the sisters. Each guy knew exactly which one he was marrying, but now then they got mixed up. What's the point of the Mishnah? Seifa itzrich because mesu lezeh echad lezeh shnaim hoyachet chaylitz l'shteim b'shnaim echad chaylitz v'echem yiyayim. So the Gemara says pshita hainu reisha. In other words, if you're telling me when there's another family involved and one has one brother and the other has two brothers, you tell me the guy with the one brother does two chalitzas. The one with the two brothers can do one does chalitza and one does yibam. So what's the point? You figured that out from the first two cases of the Mishnah. So the Gemara says, no, I might think that this side will do yibam first. If this family goes first, they're gonna be dealing with a woman that could be married to the other family, and you're marrying somebody that was be'isr lav that didn't have a chalitza yet. So we have to require that this family give the chalitza first, and then only then we go with the two guys and say, you do chalitza and you do yibum. That's the chiddush of the Mishnah. So the Gemara says, Pshita, when there's two families, that's simple, that the one with the one brother does chalitza, two chalitzas, and the one with the two brothers does one does chalitza and one does yibum. Hainu ratio. So the Gemara says, Mahu, same I would have thought, ligza trei atachad. I would say that maybe two, if you say that also, the Gemara says that if the two sides, if you're saying that the one with the two brothers, one of them could do yibum, I might also say that the one with the one brother could also do yibum, kamash malam. And it also teaches you, v'dafka michlat chalitz v'ada yibumit. We have to get the chalitza taken care of first. The last thing you do is yibum. So all the chalitzas, the one brother has to give two chalitzas, and from the other family, one brother gives chalitza, and then we allow the remaining brother to do yibum. Because you're dealing with a possibility of yavama l'shuk. If you get it wrong and you do yibum right away, maybe it's not your yavama. Maybe it's this girl belonged to the other family, and she's a yavama that's bonded to another family, and you can't take her until she's get released. That's why we make sure that all the chalitzas are done first. The last case of the Mishnah is when there's two pairs of brothers again. So one side has two brothers and the other side has two brothers. And again, these two guys that died, each one was Mekadesh, one of these sisters, and we don't know which one got which sister. So the Mishnah said, each side, one does chalitza, and the other side does chalitza. So let us say Shimon will do chalitza over here, and Kahas on the other family will do chalitza on this woman. They do opposite chalitzas. And then I'll say that the other person, the remaining brother, could marry the one the opposite chalitza. That's what the Mishnah says. The remaining brother will remarry the opposite one that the other one did chalitza for. That's what the Mishnah says. And if you think about it, then you don't run into problems. And the Gemara says, what's the point? Obviously, one could do chalitza, one could do yibum. The answer is because you might think since these girls are anyway getting yibum, I might think they're going to drop the whole chalitza business. And that's a problem. So the Gemara says we don't make that gezerah. That's what the Gemara says. Maybe they're going to do yibum without chalitza, kamash malan. Okay, now that's the four cases in the Mishnah. Basically, the premise is that if a guy doesn't know who he was Mekadesh, then he dies. If he leaves over one brother, they take two chalitzas. If they leaves over two brothers, one could do chalitza, one could do yibum. So the Gemara asks an important question. Ma'ishna, why is this case different? The Tanam we learned in the Mishnah. Look at this picture. You have four brothers, right? Ruvain, Shimon, and the outsides are Levi and Yehuda. Ruvain married a girl, and Shimon married a girl, but both married sisters. Okay, two brothers married two sisters. The two brothers that married the two sisters died. So the Mishnah says that Levi, none of the brothers can do yibum. And if they do yibum, we force them to get a divorce. So the question is why? Why don't we say that one should do chalitza and one should do yibum? Why is this case any different than our case in the Mishnah? That's the Gemara's basic premise. And the answer you probably can figure out is very simple. In this case, the reason why we don't want any of the men to marry, because really take any of the brothers, Yehuda or Levi, basically to each one of them, you have two sisters falling to yibum. They're for sure falling to yibum. So you can't be yabim one, because if you take one, that's achois zukukase. It's almost like because they're falling to yibum, they're sort of bonded with each other. So it's like almost like you're married to two sisters at the same time. So they're only left with the choice of doing chalitza. And that goes for this brother or that brother. But in our case, in our Mishnah, it's not like you were connected to both girls. Either you're connected to only one of the girls and the other one maybe belongs to the other family. You don't know if you got it right or wrong, but certainly they're not both connected to you. That's why we could always say when there's two brothers, one could do chalitza and one could do yibum. That's all the Gemara says. Maishna, why is our case different? The Tanana Bo Achem, 4 brothers, Shnaim Hem Nesuy Shtei Achayis, Meisei Nesuy Achayis, Areli Chaletzis V'lei B'Siyab Mois. We only allow chalitza, and if they do yibum, we force them to give a divorce. Why in our Mishnah we allow one brother to do chalitza and one brother to do yibum? So the Gemara says, Hachi Hashta. How can you compare 2 cases? Hasam, we go to Daf Chav Daled Amud Aleph. Hasam, Ilaman Diyama Yesh Zika. Even according to the Mandiyama that they're bonded to each other, Yesh Zika. You have 2 girls, 2 sisters coming to yibum to you, so automatically we force chalitza and we don't allow any marriage. And so that's the reason why over there we force a chalitza. But over here, they're not both bonded to you. The one is bonded to you, you don't know which one, and the other one is not bonded to you. So therefore, if you have dealing with 2 brothers, one can do the chalitza, and the other one can marry, because no matter what, when you marry, if you got it right, then you did yibum. If you got it wrong, well, you're not bonded to the sister anymore because your brother did chalitza. And there's no ishes ach. You see, because in this case over here, even let's say Levi did chalitza on this woman, right? Levi did chalitza on this woman, but you can't marry Leah because now there's no bonding anymore. Because once you did chalitza on one of the sisters, then none of them. Then this one still can fall to yibum, but still they had the iser eishes ach over here. It was still somewhat bonded together at the same time. So once they were usher for one moment, then Yehuda cannot marry Leah. That's the point. And we'll see more about that later on. Another reason why, when there are 4 brothers, you can't do yibum. Over here, kol chad v'chad, each one will say, maybe I got the right yibum. Okay, let's go further in the Gemara. The Mishnah said in this interesting thing, in this thing like over here, right over here, one brother, let's say one brother died. The brother died, and you have 2 brothers. So we said that both of them, one should do chalitza and one should do yibum. Guess what? The Mishnah says if one does, that means, I'm sorry, in the last case, if one did chalitza, and we said if they both did chalitza, let's say that both did chalitza, the other 2 could do yibum. But the Mishnah says that if they right away married both of them without right away married the chalitza women, we say that that's okay. In the end, it's okay. In other words, basically, the Mishnah is saying is that it's okay for a man to marry a chalitza woman. And the question is that if you're a Kohen, why should you be permitted to marry a chalitza woman? The Gemara says, Tanishela va'afilu shneim kahanim. Even if they're both kohanim, even if they both were kahanim, we say that it's okay. Now the question is, why? Why is that so? My tama. What's the reason? And says the Gemara, chalutza for a kohen not to marry a chalutza is the rabbanani. It's only asur midrabbanan. But here we're dealing with a suffix chalutza. It's a suffix if it's a chalutza. Loi gazer bu rabbanan. Rabbanan didn't make any gezerah. So the Gemara asks, the chalutza d'rabbanan a kohen not marrying a chalutza woman is only a d'rabbanan? We know for sure a kohen can't marry a divorcee. But what happens? Can a kohen marry a chalutza woman? Well, Tanya, we learned in the Braisa, grusha, ainli ela grusha. I only know a grusha. Chalutza menayin. How do you know that a kohen can't marry a chalutza? Talmud loyma v'isha. V'isha grusha. He's not an extra word v'isha. It comes to include that not only can a kohen marry a divorcee, so he can't marry a chalutza. So how could our Mishnah say that b'di'evet, if they marry the chalutza, is not a problem? Why? So the Gemara says no. Midrabanan hu across machta balma. Really, this whole thing is midrabanan, right? The whole thing of marrying a chalutza for a kohen is only drabanan. And here we're dealing with a suffix chalutza. Maybe the chalutza you didn't even have to give chalitza over here in one of these cases. So if you end up marrying it, so at worst the kohen married a suffix chalutza. In that case, we didn't geyser. Okay, brand new Gemara more into the halacha of Yibum, and this is interesting. In this pasuk, we have here a pasuk that says, you've seen this pasuk before. Ki yesh v'yachim yachtav, one of them dies. The Yavama has to marry her. V'hoya habachor. Look at this pasuk. V'hoya habachor asher teled, the bachor that's born. Yakom al shem achiv ameis, should take the place of his father that died. V'lo yimochesh shmo b'Yisrael, and we should not let his name be obliterated from the Jewish people. So if you read this pasuk straight, that after they get married, the Yavam with the Yavama, the first boy should be named after the deceased father, after the deceased brother, right? The firstborn, that's not true. We have a whole different interpretation of this pasuk, and this is one of the only time in the Chumash when if you read something literally, when you read it literally, it makes no sense. And the Chazal have a different interpretation of the pasuk. Now let's see it inside. Mitzvah bagodol yabim. There's a mitzvah on the oldest brother to do the yibum. Now, I'm not saying the bechor. The oldest brother means that whoever is around and is in charge of the family, he should do the yibum. Ve'im kodam hakoton. If the smaller brother jumps the head of the line and just does the yibum to that lady, zacha, he merited. Not only does he merit the marrying her, but he merits the yerusha of the deceased brother, the inheritance. Torah Abanim. The pasuk says v'hoya habachar. Mikan, it says the bechor. So mikan, from this pasuk, we imply shemitzvah bagodol yabim. Pasuk is telling me that it's a mitzvah on the oldest brother to do the yibum. We give him first the honor. Asha teled, you could do yibum to a woman that is capable to give birth. Prat la'aynalis she'ena yoledis. That excludes a sterile woman that you don't give yibum to. She doesn't fall to yibum because she cannot have children. Yakum al shem achiv l'nachla. The one that does the yibum, he takes over the inheritance of his brother. He takes over all the wealth of his brother. Now, Ata Oimer, you read the pasuk l'nachla. That the pasuk is really, this is where you're reading the pasuk. V'hoya bachar, the oldest brother that does yibum with a woman that could potentially give birth. Yakum al shem achiv ameis. He takes over the property of the brother that died. That's what you're reading the pasuk. Maybe Eina Ela L'Shem. Maybe the pasuk is just telling you simply that the eldest boy that's born, you should name it after the deceased brother. Yosef, if his name was Yosef, Koranoitza Yosef. If his name was Yochanan, Koranoitza Yochanan. Right? So the Gemara says, Nemar kan Yocham Hashem Achiv, V'nemar lahalam Hashem Acheihem, Yukor b'nachalasam, Ma Hashem Om lahalam nachala, Hashem Om kan l'nachala. There's a Gzera Shava that tells you the word shame, right over here, this word shame, tells you not that it means name, that he should be. Yaakov means that the Yavam should take over the property, the inheritance of his deceased brother. That's how you read the pasuk. And we learn it from Gzera Shava. Then we say, we shouldn't erase the deceased brother's name. What does that mean? Prat, that excludes the saras. If the brother was incapable of having children, the one that died, then there's no yibum. Because if we knew for a fact that he was missing an organ that helped that he wouldn't have had children anyway, then there's no yibum over here. Sheshmai Mochi, because his name was already obliterated. He couldn't have children. Amar Rava. Rav has commented on this pasuk. Even in all of Torah Kula, you can always read a pasuk straight on. You don't try to take a pasuk out of its straight on meaning. Hacha over here, the Torah tells you through a Gzera Shava that you have to misread the pasuk, and the pasuk is telling you a couple of things: that the bechor, the oldest child, should do the yibam. And if he does the yibam, he takes over the inheritance. So the Gemara asks, "V'lav gzeira shava havimina shem mamish." If you did not have this gzeira shava, I would have thought that you named the child after the deceased brother. How could I have such a pre-thought? The pasuk would have made sense. Leman komahazir rachmana liyabim. Who is Leman komahazir rachmana? Who is the Torah talking to? Liyavim. If it's talking about to the Yavim, and we're telling him, please name the child after your deceased brother, then it's to say Yakum Hashem Achichem Abayle. name him after your brother, right? If it's talking to Bezdin, then Bezdin should make sure that the child is named after the deceased brother. Yakum al Shem Achi Aviv Mibayale. The pasuk should say that the Bezdin should make sure that his name should take the name of the father's brother, right? Of the brother of the father. So how would you read the pasuk if you're trying to read it straight? So the Gemara says no. Maybe the Torah is talking to Bezdin. You should tell the Yabam, make sure you name it after your brother. So basically, what the Gemara just said over here, that maybe I could still read the pasuk straight. And I could say, V'hoya Bachar, the eldest boy that's born from this marriage, Asher Telit, Yakum, he should be named Al Shem Achiv Hameis, the named after the brother that died. Who are we talking to? Who should make sure? The Bezdin should tell the Yavam, if you're doing Yibam, name him after your brother that died. That's how you would read the pasuk, had you not had the Gzeir Shabbat. Now, the Gemara asks another question. Hashta the Amret Kra Bagodol Ksiv. Now you're telling me that Bahoya Bachar doesn't mean the firstborn child. What Bachar means is the first oldest brother should do the Yibam. So Hashta the Amret Kra Bagodol Ksiv, Ema Bachar Liyabim. Maybe the Chumash is telling you that only the oldest brother should do Yibam. Pashit, but if you're not the oldest brother, Lo Liyabim, you can't do Yibam. Right? That's a good question. So the Gemara says, if that's the case, why does the Torah go out of his way to tell you an exclusion that if there's another boy born after the brother was deceased, then he doesn't do Yibam? He's not doing Yibam anyway because he's not the Bechar. Obviously, he was born later on. So that's why it's a proof that the Torah doesn't mean that only the Bechar should do Yibam. So the Gemara says, Parach Rav Acha asked back, Be'ema, maybe the Torah is La Mu'ute Bucher D'ima. It's possible to have a Bechor born after the deceased brother. How's that possible? He's born from another mother. He's born like this. Yaakov had one son, Rachel, married to Rachel. They had Ruvain. Ruvain was married to Miriam. Ruvain died. Yaakov has married Leah and had Shimon. Right, as you see in the picture. He had from another wife, a Bechar from another wife. And here, the Torah is telling you, since he's a Bechar, and technically he could do Yibam, but because he was born after his brother died, that's why he doesn't do Yibam. So maybe that's what the Pasuk is teaching you. And only Bechorim could do Yibam. So the Gemara says you can never say something like that, because that type of brother doesn't do Yibam at all. If you're only related by the mother, you don't do Yibam. You can't say that Yibam benachal Torah Rachmana. Yibam is connected only from it has to do with inheritance. Benachla mina av v'lo. Brothers are connected by inheritance only if they have the same father, not if they share the same mother. So that kid would never do Yibam, even if he was born in the lifetime of his brother, because they don't share a common father. So the Gemara says, okay. Again, the Gemara is like hitting at this because there's a problem with this pasuk. You know what the problem with this pasuk means? If Bechor means the oldest kid, it doesn't necessarily mean the firstborn kid. Why does it say Bechor? Why doesn't it say V'hoya HaGadol, the oldest kid? So since the Torah stresses the word Bechor, perhaps the Torah is telling you that only a Bechor, only the firstborn kid should do Yibam. And that's where the Gemara is asking all this. The Ema, let us say that the pasuk means to say like this: Ki ika bechor tiskayim mitzvahs yibam. If there's a firstborn child, then you keep the mitzvahs yibam. Ki leika bechor, but if there is no bechor, loy tiskayim mitzvahs yibam. There should be no yibam at all. So that's what it means. If let's say the bechor was nifter somewhere, then there is no yibam. So amakra, that's not true. Umeis echem mehem. Mi lo yaskin the misbechav amarach mar liyabim katan. The Torah said that ki yeshlu achem yachlev, if you have two brothers, or maybe let's say two brothers living at the same time, umeis achem mehem, and one of them dies. And possibly that umeis achem means with the bechor dies. And then the pasuk says that a yavama should marry the Avama should marry her and do Yibam to her. So we see that even if there is no Bechar, there is a mitzvah of Yibam. Okay, now the Gemara says, Be'ema, let us say, how do you know? The Torah said Meis Achamhem. Maybe the Torah is talking about where the Katan died. And the Bechar is doing the Yibam. And only Becharim doing the Yibam. So the Gemara says, but then the Torah already told you that it cannot only be talking about a Bechar. Because the Torah tells you that if another child is born, that child doesn't do Yibam. Why would I think so if only Becharim do Yibam? So the Gemara is like pounding at this. The Ema, let us say like this. Okay, I'll give you granted that Yibam could be done with all the children. All the children have a right to do the Yibam. So, but I'll say like this: Ki Leka Bechar, if there's no oldest child, if there's no firstborn, Kadam Katan Zacha. If the Katan does Yibam, if he does Yibam, that's good. The Ika Bechar, but if there is a firstborn child, if Kadam Katan Loizacha, if the younger child does Yibam, it doesn't work because there's a Bechar there. If you jump ahead of the line, it won't effectuate a Yibam. Maybe let us say that. And that's why the Torah stresses Bechar. If there's a Bechar, even if a Katan jumps the line, his Yibam won't work. Maybe that's the case. Amar Akra, but the pasuk says, Ki yeshu yachim yachtav, when brothers are around at the same time and one of them dies. Hukshu yeshivas achim zelazeh. The Torah compares and juxtaposes all the brothers have the right to do Yibam right away, and there's no benefit to the Bechar over the other brothers. So the Ema, let us say, Ki ikre Bechar lihader agadol. When there is a Bechar, then we try for him to do it. He's the firstborn. But Ki Leka Bechar, but if there is no Bechar, Ein Chayzun Eitzel Gadol, then we don't look for the second oldest child. Now, here the Gemara is saying, okay, I'll grant you. Bechor, we try to get him to do it. And if he doesn't want to do Yibam, then all the rest of the brothers have an equal shot. But that's not the case. Once we go to the firstborn and he doesn't want to do it, we go to the next oldest child. And that's the halacha. Because Alama Tana Abaya Kashisha, mitzvah begodol yabim. It's mitzvah to the oldest one to do Yibam. Loi Ratza, if he doesn't want to, Holchem Eitzel Achiv HaKatan, we go to his smaller brother. Loi Rachza, and if he doesn't want, Chayzer Eitzel Gadol, then we go back to the older one. But we see that what we do see is that not all the brothers, we always try to get the older brother to do the Yibam in order of the way they were born. So the Gemara says, Ki Bechar, Ma Bechar Becharasai Garmalai, Af Gadol Kidulasai Garmalai. So the truth is that we wouldn't give that opportunity that every brother has the right to do it at the same time. We try to give respect to the older child because the Torah says, V'hoya Bechar, we want the oldest child to do it. And if it's not the Bechar, then we go to the next oldest child. And if not that one, we go to the next oldest child.
Bernard, where's the source of this? Is this from like Yehuda and Tamar? Is that where the source?
No, because the pasuk is al Shem. And what the Torah is saying is Yakum al Shem, that the brother, this Yakum al Shem means you take over the inheritance. That brother that died, the one that's going to do
it's all about inheritance.
It's all about inheritance. So now, then what is Bahaya Bechar? Means the Bechar that does the Yibam, he should take over the inheritance. So the Gemara is thinking that only Becharim do Yibam. So the Gemara says, no, it can't be. So, but the Gemara is thinking that maybe, how do you know if the oldest, how do you know you go in order? So it's like the Bechar, that just like Bechar, you give respect to the Bechar, you also give the respect also to the older children to give them the right to do Yibam first.
Well, I know it was pre-Torah, but it's more direct, more of a shot from Yehuda and his children. Then they show like the oldest son, and obviously they committed a sin, but it wasn't the oldest. And then Yehuda said, Tamar's going to take my youngest one, so I'm going to, and he ended up obviously having a relationship with Tamar. But wasn't it the case that the oldest was first?
The older one, right. But the truth is he only had two children. So the oldest child died.
Right.
And, that's a good point because there was a Havamin in the Gemara that said that if the Bechor dies, there should be no Yibam at all. The Gemara said that previously. And how could the Gemara say that when you see in the Torah Yehuda, his oldest child died, and he's doing in the next one, his second child, which turned out to be his youngest at that time, does Yibam.
Exactly. So, but it was obviously it was pre-Matan Torah.
Right,
still, we use that sometimes, as a reference, even those instances. But I guess
I imagine that your question is pointed out by the Rishonim. It's not. It's a good question.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, the Gemara is going to finish up this conversation. If the Bechor, maybe the Torah is telling you, if the firstborn child does the Yibam, he gets the inheritance. Kibiyabim Pashit. When another child who's not the firstborn does Yibam, he gets no inheritance. Maybe that's what the pasuk is telling you. Amakra, but the pasuk says Yakum Hashem Achiv. Whoever takes over, whoever did the Yibam, he gets the Nachla. V'harei kam. So even if he's not the Bechor, at the end of the day, if he did the Yibam, the Torah seems to imply that he gets the inheritance. So the El Bechor the Kayi Rachmana, we go to Amid Beis, Lamai Hilkasa. What halacha do you learn that the Torah says V'hoya Bechor that does the Yibam, he takes over the Nachla? It's not the Bechor. Any child could take over the Yib to do the Yibam. It can be the second, third, fourth. It doesn't matter. Why does the Torah say that the Bechor that does the Yibam? And if you want to tell me that it's the older child should do the Yibam, and we want to show respect, that's what the Torah wants you to do. Give the first dibs to the older child. Then the pasuk should say, "V'hoya hagadol," the older child that's born should do the Yibam. Why does it say the word Bechor? So the Gemara says, "Ligreusa," to take away some of the inheritance. Ma Bechor einu noitel beroi kebemuchsa, avhai einu noitel beroi kebemuchsa. In other words, that the only inheritance that you take over is only the inheritance that was there at the time of death. But let's say there was a potential inheritance that came after the guy died. In other words, let's say the brother died. So he had a property worth $1 million. And then later, and then you did Yibam. Then the grandfather died and he had a big estate. So you don't say, oh, well, the brother that was deceased should take part and I should get double. The one that did Yibam should get his part of the Nachla plus his brother that died that he did Yibam for, he should get his share. No, it's like a Bechor. A Bechor only takes what's muchsak. Only he takes inheritance of what's there. He takes pishnaim. He gets double. Only what the inheritance was at the time of death. But if another money falls after the father died, the Bechor does not take Pishnayim, doesn't take double. And same thing over here, the Yabam will not take the deceased brother's inheritance only for what's there, not what the deceased brother earns after he died. New Mishnah, I want to just jump to this Mishnah just to get started. We'll go to the Tanur Rabbanan very fast. Hanitan al hashifcha v'nishtachara. A person had a rumor that he was sleeping with a shifcha, and she became free. So technically, she became a Jewess. There's rumors about a person that he was having an affair with a goya. Vinis gayer, and that that woman became a ger. The Mishnah says, lo yichnos. He shouldn't marry her. Now, why shouldn't he marry her? At the end of the day, now that she's a gioris, there's no issa to marry her. And the fact that he was mizana with her, let's say he actually was mizana with her when she was a goya, it's an avera, but it shouldn't prohibit him from marrying her should she become a gier. And the Gemara is going to say a fascinating thing, because everybody's going to schmooze about this affair. You don't want people to be talking about you. So maybe it's advice that the Mishnah is saying, don't marry this woman. Then konas, but if you do marry this woman, the Bezdin will not force a get. But hanitin aleishes is, if there's a rumor about a person having relations with a married woman, now there's even if it's just a rumor, if it's a substantiated rumor, then even vahitzi uhu, even if she got divorced from her husband, bitachas yodai, then the second guy, the one that she had an affair with, or the rumor that she had an affair is, even if he married her, he has to divorce her, because there's an issa daraisa to live with a woman that you had an affair with while she was married to somebody else. So even if she gets divorced, you're not permitted to marry her. V'nitma, that means the boil, he cannot have relations. So the Gemara asks just the final question, and then we'll get it down over here. How could she become a Gioris if the only reason why she's becoming a Gioris, let's say this Shiksa, she wants to marry this guy. But we say that he shouldn't marry her, but the Gioris works. But it's not a true Gioris. We want somebody who becomes a Jew to do it because of sincere reasons. But the Mishnah says, Gioris miyahava. The Gioris would work. Uraminu, I'll ask you a contradiction. Echad ishin is gailashim isha. If a man, a goy who becomes a ger because he wants to marry a woman. The echad ishish is gailashim ish. If a woman wants to become a ger because she wants to marry a man. The chein nish is gailashim shulchim malachim. A person's megayer because he sees it's great by the Jewish people. V'shum avdei shlomo. It's an expression that the Jews are super wealthy. He wants to join the clan. Einam gerim, it doesn't work. Divrei Rab Nechemia. Shahoyer Rab Nechemia Omer. Rab Nechemia said, Echad gerei rayas. If someone became a ger because he's afraid of lions, Echad gerei chalamis, or he had this hallucination of a dream that they told him become a Jew. Echad gerei Mordechai Esther. Even the gerim at Mordechai Esther, where the Megillah says that after the Jews went on top, Rabbi Ma'amei Haaretz Misn Yahadim. A lot of goyim became gerim in the time of Mordechai Esther. Einam gerim. Rabbi Nechemia holds the gerish doesn't work. Achin is gerim b'zman hazeh until they become gerim like today. B'zman hazeh sal kadaitich. Only today can a ger become a ger, not before. Elaima kibazman hazeh. They have to become gerim like the Jews are today, just like the Jews are oppressed. And there's no reason why you become a ger. Only because you sincerely like the religion, that's only then the gerus works. But if we see an ulterior motive, then even if you become a ger, the ger doesn't work. So how could our Mishnah say that the gerus does work for this woman? We see that she had an affair with a man, so the only reason why she's becoming a gerus is because she wants to marry this guy. So the Gemara says, Ha'itma Allah, we learned, this is the halacha, that even though you're not supposed to take a ger that's not sincere, but if they do become a ger, you find a rabbi that makes them a ger, they're a ger. So if she becomes a ger, and she's a full-fledged gerus, right? So why can't I marry her? Why can't I marry her? Just because we had an affair, now she's permitted, she's Jewish. So the Gemara says, Mishum de Ravasi, the Amar Ravasi, Hasam imcha ikshus pet uzus v'sayim. You have to remove people, that people should not be talking about you. And if people will see you come to a wedding with this woman, they'll say, oh, he had an affair with her. She became a half a Gioris, and then they married each other. So you want to take that kind of conversation out of people's mouths. And even if you know it's not true, you didn't have an affair with her, if people are talking about it, you shouldn't marry this woman. But again, if she do marry her, you don't force the divorce. We'll finish to the dot. When the days of Mashiach come, we will not accept any converts because the Jews will have wealthy and it'll be great for the Jews. During the time of David Melech and the time of Shlomo Melech, they would not makabel any gerim. The Torah is telling you that who is going to live with you when who's going to live with you when I'm not with you? Bizman hazeh. Whoever does, then Olayach Yipol, then he will fall to Olam Haba. In other words, a gerus only works when the Jews are on the bottom, and he's coming sincerely a ger. Then Hashem says, "I'll accept him to Olam Haba." But now, Moshe Mashiach, or during the time of Shlomo and David HaMelech, when the Jews had it so great, we won't accept, on our general rule, we won't accept gerim. Okay.
All right. Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah, sure.
The whole idea of Yevamos is